welcome back to Film with a Whisk. My name is Dakota, and today we're making a gingerbread house. But not just any gingerbread house, I decided to make a replica of Buckingham Palace. I've never really made a real gingerbread house before. I've done like the kits. I think something with graham crackers and frosting when I was little, but never like an actual bake the cookie, decorate and build the house. So I decided, why not go big or go home. So this one's going to be about 1.5 feet long, little over half a foot tall. It's going to have a bunch of sugar glass windows. I've never worked with that before, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Alright, so let's get cooking. I mixed up the dough, accidentally quadrupled the amount of allspice I added, but it smelled really good and no one's actually going to eat this thing anyway, so it's fine. Now while this firms up in the fridge, I'm going to get started with my pattern. I started with the overall drawing of the building, and now I'm going through and breaking that down to each individual cookie I have to bake. That way I know I have my measurements right, and that I won't forget anything. I'll wind up having to make 8 cookies in all. Now that the dough's firmed up, it's time to roll out all the cookies. Since all my measurements are pretty precise, I decided it would be the easiest to go ahead and roll them out on silicone mats. That way I can just cut out the dough around my cookies and transfer the entire mat to my cookie sheets, rather than trying to lift up the cookie dough for each piece and stretching it and warping it and making it all the pieces not fit together. I just left everything pretty much the same as I cut it out. I did have to add some extra dough to this piece because it just wasn't big enough for what I needed, and I did start to worry that I hadn't made enough dough because I did double my recipe for this, thinking I would use the extra dough for another project, but I wound up using both batches of dough just on this one. Now it's finally big enough I can start cutting out the basic shape. And yes, I was terrified the entire time that I did this that I would accidentally cut through my macaron mats. Thankfully that did not happen. Right, and now I start cutting out the doorways and windows. Had to be pretty accurate with this so that all my overlays for this piece would match up. As I cut out each window, I also had to go back through and touch up the edges for little bits of cookie dough that got left behind. That way it'd be a nice clean edge for the sugar glass to sit into. This was the longest part of the project, cutting out all the windows. I spent probably a few hours just doing this alone. Now I'm finishing cutting out the overlays for the front of the palace. I forgot to actually film pouring the sugar glass, But as you can see, it turned out pretty well. I'm just touching up where it spilled and splattered. And now it's time to decorate the baked cookies. Part of it looks burnt right here, but that's just the weird shadows. Now let's get it assembled and check out the finished palace. Alright, so it's done. A gingerbread Buckingham Palace, complete with a little queen on the balcony. I'm really loving how the windows turn out. You know, I've never used that before. Made me nervous. It was kind of dripping all over the place. I was able to scrape it off with a little knife. And then once I added the piping around the windows, you really couldn't tell there's any spills or leaks or anything with that. I don't work with royal icing very often, so it's a little, you know, crooked and lumpy, but yeah, I think it's pretty good. I'm kind of proud of it. You saw in the video a second ago those little lights I have inside. They aren't quite bright enough, so they're definitely at the bottom, but the upper story windows is kind of dim. I only made the front section of the palace because in reality it's a big square with a courtyard in the middle here, but this is what you see all the photos, and we stand at Victoria Fountain in London. I'd considered making the little corgis and the guards and the red coats and the tall black hats to go out front too, but I ran out of time, plus, well, I didn't run out of time, but it took 12 hours to build this. Plus the painting the icing on the queen just didn't look that great, so I decided to do the one figure. But yeah, it took 12 hours to make it. I started at 2 p.m. Mixing up the dough. Then while that chilled in the fridge for 2 hours, I sat here and drew out the plan for it, because starting this out, I had no idea what I was doing. I just had a vague idea of Buckingham Palace. There was no actual plan. So I got the grid paper and drew it out to, each grid was half an inch, so I was pretty precise with it. And once I finished drawing it out, it took a little while, so the dough was almost ready to use at that point. So then I rolled it out, and I actually made 2 batches of dough because I planned on making a second smaller piece, and I thought that would be more than enough, but this used almost the entire 2 batches. What really took the longest was the measuring and cutting of all the pieces. The icing really didn't take that long, surprisingly. And the sugar glass didn't take long either. It was just real nerve-wracking because I was terrified that I was going to spill it over the whole thing and have it all peppermint glass, or people kept letting the dogs in the room with me. They had gates shutting them out, they kept letting them in, so I was scared I was gonna spill it on them, or they're gonna bump into me and make me spill it on them or something. But I mean, the whole process itself went pretty quick. If I do something intricate like this again, I'm definitely designing it on the computer and then cutting out a template with poster board on my Cricut machine. That way I can just lay it on and cut it out and trace it. It'll be a lot easier, a lot less measuring. So I kept having to go back and when you're cutting the windows, I'd cut a ½ inch away from where it needed to be because I kept losing my place. And some people might ask about Buckingham Palace. But for one, I wanted something recognizable. See if I could make something recognizable, and it kind of did. But also, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know I have a teeny, tiny, itty bitty full-blown obsession with the royal family. I collect like commemorative plates of the royals, and actually sent out Christmas cards to members of the royal families of Europe for the 2nd year in a row now. I've already got a card back from Princess Anne. A lot of glare there. And might get some more back. I don't know, we'll see. I read a lot of books and stuff about them too. It's pretty interesting. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.